Did you know that the origin of humanity is found in this massive rift in the Earth? Or that Antelope Canyon is one of the most photographed places in the world? Today, we'll explore 20 places where the Earth splits in two. Get ready to see some of the most incredible canyons, cliffs, and tectonic faults around the globe. Let's watch it. It's fascinating. The Great Rift Valley. Did you know that humanity evolved in a huge tectonic rift? Yes, you heard that right. Our entire human family primarily developed in what we now know as the Great Rift Valley in Africa. Here's the story. About 10 million years ago, the African continent began to split into two as the Somali Plate and the African Plate slowly drifted apart, creating a gigantic crack stretching from Eritrea to Mozambique. In fact, the enormous lakes seen in eastern Central Africa are the result of the significant depressions left by this rift. And it turns out, about 5 million years ago, this massive crack created a system of vast plains, savannas, and valleys, where a particular species of ape was forced to evolve the ability to walk on two legs to cover the enormous distances of open land forming in the center of the rift. Yes, this great rift is what made us evolve in the first place. What we're seeing is none other than the cradle of humanity. The expansion of this rift continues to this day, so it's not surprising that in this strip of countries, right in the center of the valleys, large canyons appear where once there was flat land. Scientists believe that within 1 or 2 million years, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, and parts of Mozambique will separate from the rest of Africa, gradually forming an African inland sea similar to the Mediterranean Sea. Though who knows if humanity will be around to see it. Antelope Canyon. This is one of those places that has become so popular you've probably seen it as a wallpaper more than once. It's one of the most photographed places in the world. And for good reason, it looks so surreal, it seems like a landscape from a distant planet. We're talking about the stunning Antelope Canyon, located in northern Arizona, USA. It's divided into two main sections, Upper Antelope Canyon and Lower Antelope Canyon, but both are almost equally popular. These breathtaking rock formations are the result of sudden floods from the Colorado River, which, after millions of years of erosion, carved out very narrow canyons with unusually wavy walls. Because it's extremely narrow in some places, structures resembling skylights sometimes form, illuminating the canyon with beams of concentrated light, making it a photographer's dream, which is why it's one of the most photographed places in the world. The stunning colors we see are created by the iron oxide-rich rocks, but also by the concentrated light entering the canyons. In other words, the canyon isn't very different from the surrounding landscape, but the concentration of light makes it look unique. Both sections are on Navajo Nation land, so access to Antelope Canyon is restricted and can only be visited through guided tours, as it is a sacred place for the Navajo. If you plan to visit, be aware that sudden floods that created the canyon continue to occur even today, especially during the summer rainy season. Therefore, entry to the canyon is also prohibited if there is a risk of rain. Tater Hills. Imagine walking through your ranch and suddenly coming across a massive fissure in the earth that wasn't there a couple of weeks ago. It sounds like the start of a disaster movie, but that's exactly what happened in Pinor County, Arizona. This is the curious case of the Tater Hills fissure, a huge crack that appeared in just a few weeks in what was once farmland, becoming a geological and tourist curiosity. While it might seem like the result of some tectonic disturbance, it's most likely caused by human activity, specifically a process known as aquifer depletion subsidence. What happens in this case is that Arizona's agricultural lands heavily rely on underground aquifers, and if they are overexploited without allowing them to refill naturally, massive voids form beneath the surface. These voids, when emptied of liquid, can no longer support the weight of the earth above, causing a significant internal collapse that splits the land in two as we see. And of course, since the collapse forms right where there used to be groundwater in some parts of the fissure, you can see many plants growing because their deeper roots are searching for remnants of the aquifer. Or maybe something very big has just awakened in the depths of Arizona. KAG Bolton. This is one of those landscapes that makes thousands of mountaineers risk their lives each year just for the chance to see it with their own eyes. And, as you might guess, the main attraction of the place is a gigantic boulder that seems to split the mountains in two. This is KAG Bolton in Norway. What we have here is a unique rock formation located on Mount KAG, where a massive stone block is wedged into a gap between two mountains and suspended a kilometer above the Lysefjord. The rock measures about 176.5 cubic feet and is estimated to have been trapped in its current position during the last ice age. Back then, Norway and much of northern Europe were covered with thick ice sheets, which slowly moved and ended up creating huge cracks in the mountains while placing rock formations in quite unusual locations, like what we see here. If you want to reach this place, you need to be prepared for one of the most demanding hikes in the mountaineering world, as the strange formation is exactly 3,556 feet above sea level, and getting to it requires a round-trip hike of approximately 6.2 miles. The Verdon Gorge, considered one of the most beautiful canyons in France, and indeed in all of Europe, I'd even dare say in the entire world, is the Verdon Gorge, also known as the European Grand Canyon. Located in the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region in southeastern France, near Italy, the canyon features walls that rise up to 2,297 feet at their highest point. Its width varies, reaching up to 656 feet in some places and narrowing to less than 20 feet in others. But perhaps the most impressive aspect is the turquoise color of the Verdon River, which is caused by glacial water reflecting off the canyon's white rock walls, creating a visual effect not unlike that of tropical seas. Silfra. Iceland sits right on the boundary where the North American plate separates from the European plate, which makes it an extremely volcanic island filled with stunning canyons and fissures. However, there's a special spot where you can literally see the plate separation, although you'll need to be prepared for diving. This is the spectacular Silfra Fissure located in Thingvellir National Park. Most of the time, fissures between continents are underwater, making them imperceptible. In Silfra, part of the depression created by the fissure remained above ground and filled with water from surrounding glaciers. This water, filtered through Iceland's volcanic rock, forms a glacial lake with incredibly clear waters, boasting visibility that can exceed 328 feet, comparable to the clarity of the best swimming pools. Of course, being a glacial lake, you need to prepare for temperatures between 36 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit. However, due to tectonic heat, the lake maintains this temperature year-round and doesn't freeze, even in harsh Icelandic winters. If you choose to dive in these waters, you'll see the two walls of a canyon, which are actually the North American and European tectonic plates. So, swimming from one wall to the other is like theoretically traveling between continents. Crack in the ground. This stunning place where the Earth seems to split in two is located in Oregon, USA, and is called Crack in the Ground. I know, they didn't put much effort into naming it, but the images will take your breath away. What we have here is a type of geological formation that occurs when a lava tunnel is exposed to the elements. Let me explain. Millions of years ago, what is now Oregon experienced intense volcanic activity. Over time, the volcanoes cooled down and lost their energy, leaving behind rock tunnels where magma once flowed. Eventually, the soil above these tunnels eroded, exposing them to the air and elements, causing them to collapse and create these enormous formations where the Earth seems to crack open. And just in case you're wondering, the lava from these ancient tunnels fed into a massive volcanic caldera, which, after a monumental explosion and subsequent cooling, left behind a huge crater known as Hole in the Ground. Seems like Oregonians aren't very original when it comes to naming their natural monuments. Shotan Caves, a mountain split in two, with a river emerging from the crack and expelling the springs from the heart of the mountain. This might sound like a fantasy landscape description, but it's real. So real that UNESCO has designated it as a World Heritage Site. We're talking about the incredible Shotan Caves in southwestern Slovenia, near the border with Italy. This fascinating geological formation features the Reka River carving out a series of enormous caverns within a mountain, completely traversing it and creating an astonishingly complex cave system filled with galleries and passages. It looks more like something from Tolkien's dwarves than a natural formation. At the center, there is an impressive canyon carved right into the heart of the mountain, the world's largest underground canyon. Known as the Martel Chamber, it measures 479 feet long, 404 feet wide, and up to 348 feet high, all underground. Usually, rivers don't have the power to cut through a mountain so spectacularly. However, in this case, the mountain is primarily made of limestone, which dissolves in water over time, allowing the river to cut through the mountain rather than going around it as it would with other types of rock. With an abundant flow of oxygenated water, these caves have a rich biodiversity of species adapted to darkness. Among the most interesting inhabitants are Proteus, a type of salamander that has evolved to live in complete darkness and thus has lost its eyes and skin pigment. So just like in a fantasy novel, This amazing underground realm is home to strange creatures. Additionally, archaeological remains dating back to the Bronze Age have been found, indicating that the caves were used and explored by ancient warriors, essentially a fantasy land made real. Tooco Gorge. Undoubtedly, the most significant natural attraction in Taiwan is the breathtaking Tooco Gorge, a series of deep canyons carved into the mountains of the Hualien region. These natural wonders were formed by the erosion of the Liwu River, which cut through the limestone-rich mountains, creating a series of winding canyons with various cliffs, gorges, and even caves. Along the way, you can find several ancient temples that look like they belong in a kung fu movie. In various sections of its course, the river exposes unusual minerals, causing parts of the riverbanks to have unusual colors, ranging from gypsum white to bluish gray in certain areas. Not to mention the many waterfalls and streams that form along the way. There's always something interesting to see along the river's path to its spectacular outlet on the eastern side of the island. Icelandic Tectonic Fault. Iceland is a very unique island, as unlike many others, it exists primarily due to its location on a tectonic fault. Just beneath Iceland, the North American plate separates from the European plate, creating lava flows emerging from where the plates split. Over time, these flows have hardened and risen, gradually forming the island in the middle of the Atlantic. These same tectonic movements are repeated on the island itself, which means that the Icelandic landscape features gigantic fissures in the earth like these. Moreover, these enormous rifts have shaped Icelandic society, as many roads, cities, and infrastructure are built within the vast valleys created by these landforms. Now that's a dramatic landscape, wouldn't you say? San Andreas Fault. Usually places where two tectonic plates meet are underwater, but sometimes there are incredible examples where we can see these seams of the world on solid ground, such as the San Andreas Fault. Located in California, USA, it stretches approximately 807 miles from Northern California, through the southern part of the state, and down to Baja California in Mexico. The two plates here are the North American plate and the Pacific plate. Unlike some other faults, this one isn't separating or converging. Instead, the plates are sliding past each other laterally, essentially scraping against each other without either giving way. It's literally what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. This is a significant problem for the region because when two tectonic plates scrape past each other, the result can be some of the most powerful earthquakes on record. Several major cities lie in its path. The San Andreas Fault has been responsible for several devastating earthquakes throughout history. One of the most notable was the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which had an estimated magnitude of 7.8 and caused massive destruction in the city and its surroundings. Another significant event was the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, with a magnitude of 6.9, which also caused extensive damage in the San Francisco Bay Area. Vallone dei Mulini. One of the most impressive things about our species is that instead of adapting to our environment, we adapt our environment to us, and this stunning crater is a curious and beautiful example of that. Around 35,000 years ago, the eruption of an ancient volcano in Italy created a deep volcanic rift near where the city of Sorrento would eventually be located. The rift was so deep that many local streams and tributaries cascaded into the depths of the canyon. Over time, especially in the 13th century, the locals began to harness these waterfalls to create water wheels that could power flour mills and circular saws. This made the area extremely important for production and was indeed the reason for founding the city that would later become Sorrento. In the 19th century, urban development and changes in water management led to the disappearance of the amazing waterfalls, and the mills that had initially established Sorrento were abandoned as the city had grown beyond their need. The medieval mills fell into ruin, overtaken by mosses, ferns, and other vegetation, and over time became a tourist attraction in the vast volcanic rift. So, as you can see, humanity initially used the landscape they had until they transformed it completely, leaving behind these fascinating ruins in the process. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Weia Canyon. Did you know that in the middle of the Pacific there's an equivalent to the Grand Canyon? Yes, indeed. It's the stunning Weia Canyon, also known as the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. Located in Hawaii, specifically on the island of Kauai, it stretches about 13.6 miles long, up to 1 mile wide, and reaches a depth of 2,953 feet at its deepest point. The canyon was formed by both volcanic activity that created the Hawaiian Islands and erosion. Kauai is the oldest island in Hawaii, so there was enough geological time for rain and wind to carve the original volcanic rock into the canyon, giving it an unusual reddish color similar to the Grand Canyon. But that's not all in terms of colors, as several species of mosses on the island have evolved to live in this environment, giving the canyon greenish hues. In case you were wondering, the name Waimea means red water in Hawaiian, referring to the reddish color of the soil and river waters due to the high iron concentration in the volcanic rock. As one of the oldest islands in the chain and thus one of the most stable in terms of volcanism, it has been inhabited for a very long time, and it is believed that the first human inhabitants of Hawaii lived in the canyon. Garot Cave. This may not be the largest or most significant fissure on our planet, but it is certainly one of the most spectacular, at least in terms of scenery. It's the stunning Garot Cave in Iceland. Located in the northern part of the country, near Lake Mývatn, it's known for its impressively clear hot spring lake, which was once used as a filming location for the popular series Game of Thrones, in its third season. Initially, the cave was a lava tunnel, but over the ages it cooled, and a hot spring formed inside. Later, one of the tunnel's walls collapsed over time, creating an entrance. The place was used by locals as a hot spring source. In the 18th century, it was popular for bathing due to the pleasant water temperature. However, nowadays, due to increased volcanic activity, the water temperature is too hot, ranging between 104 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit and occasionally rising to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature can vary due to underlying volcanic activity. Red Sea. Did you know that, geologically speaking, the Red Sea is actually a large tectonic fault? Yes, that's right. The Red Sea, which separates Africa from the Arabian Peninsula, is actually a rift between continents, and it was one of the last seas to form. Moreover, if you look closely, you'll see that this sea has a very elongated shape, and if we exclude the Suez Canal, it has only one outlet to other seas, indicating that it hasn't been around for very long. To give you an idea, here is a map of the tectonic plates, and if you look, the Red Sea is precisely where the African plate separates from the Arabian plate, perfectly following the division. So, technically speaking, it's not a sea, but a continental rift. Because of this, the Red Sea is much shallower than other seas, which supports a rich diversity of corals taking advantage of the shallow depth. And of course, where there are corals, there's a vibrant ecosystem around the sea, giving us beautiful underwater landscapes in the extensive canyons formed in the tectonic fault. Scientists believe that in the future, this sea might disappear, as the Somali plate that created the Rift Valley is moving and could split Africa in two, potentially blocking the Red Sea's entrance. Kings Canyon. The Australian outback is one of the most stunning landscapes in the world, and Kings Canyon is like the crown jewel of this impressive area. Located in Watarka National Park in the Northern Territory of Australia, this breathtaking geological formation features a magnificent plateau split in two by seasonal streams. Though these streams don't flow year-round, they have carved away much of the red limestone of the plateau over thousands of years. What's particularly interesting about this canyon is that it's actually the last remnant of a mountain range that formed 400 million years ago during the Devonian period. This mountain range used to be as prominent as the Andes or the Himalayas, covering much of what is now Australia. However, after a vast amount of time, erosion has nearly destroyed it, leaving only these plateaus as remnants of the ancient range. Samaria Gorge. This is the kind of place the ancient Greeks might have envisioned when they thought of mountains, and it certainly has a great charm. The stunning Samaria Gorge is located on the island of Crete, Greece. It is one of the longest gorges in Europe, stretching approximately 9.94 miles. At its narrowest point, known as the Iron Gates, the gorge narrows to just 9.84 feet wide, with walls rising up to 984 feet high. Something very interesting about this gorge is its rich biodiversity, which includes the wild goats of Crete and some of the wild relatives of the olive tree, suggesting that the domestication of these crucial species for civilization may have begun here. The hike through the gorge is quite challenging, taking between 5 and 7 hours to traverse completely. But look at those landscapes. It's certainly worth it, don't you think? Todra Gorges. Morocco occupies one of the most mountainous regions of the Sahara Desert, and this means that the country is home to some of the most impressive desert canyons in the world, like the stunning Todra Gorges. Located in the eastern region of the High Atlas in Morocco, the walls of Todra Gorges rise up to 1,312 feet high, at their tallest point. Because these walls are almost entirely vertical due to erosion, they appear much taller from the base of the canyon. In some places, the gorge narrows to just 32.8 feet wide, creating a dramatic passage where you almost feel like you're at the feet of the Titan Atlas holding up the sky. Although many of the canyon's walls are almost completely vertical, they have enough ledges to be climbable, making the gorges a popular destination for rock climbers. Door to Hell. Not all impressive fissures are natural. Some were created by humans. In fact, some were accidentally created, but that doesn't make them any less impressive. Let me introduce you to the Darvaza gas crater, better known by its informal name, the Door to Hell. With a name and image like that, it's hard not to look at it with some level of fascination, even if it's not natural. The story of this peculiar place began in 1971 in what is now Turkmenistan. At that time, Soviet geologists were drilling for natural gas in the Karakum Desert, and boy, did they find it. During the operation, the ground beneath the drilling rig collapsed, creating a crater and releasing large amounts of methane gas in an explosion. To prevent the poisonous gas from spreading and causing damage, the geologists decided to set it on fire, hoping the gas would burn off in a few weeks as it usually would in such cases. But the methane never extinguished and has been burning continuously for over 5 decades, with no end in sight. Imagine an industrial accident with consequences that last half a century. A real madness. The crater itself is about 229.66 feet in diameter and 98.43 feet deep. The flames within create a stunning view, especially at night when the fire's glow stands out in the desert darkness. Although it started as a ridiculously large industrial accident, the Door to Hell has become a popular tourist attraction and has given the Karakum region some tourist relevance. However, the crater also represents an environmental problem due to the ongoing methane emissions, a potent greenhouse gas. In the future, the Turkmenistan government might decide to seal the hole and extinguish the flames. Who knows? Maybe the doors to Hades were indeed in Turkmenistan, and we never realized it. Kula Canyon. Peru is situated right in the middle of the Andes, and this location means it has some of the most dramatic landscapes of the entire Andean range. Of course, this includes one of the most impressive canyons in South America, Kula Canyon. Located in southern Peru in the Arequipa region, it is only 62.14 miles long, but what it lacks in length, it makes up for in depth, being one of the deepest canyons in the world, with depths reaching 10,730 feet at its lowest point. The canyon was carved by the Kula River, and the immense valleys formed along it are vital for the region's biodiversity and history. Among the prominent inhabitants are some of the largest populations of Andean condors, and many of the canyon's slopes feature agricultural terraces developed by Andean civilizations, still in use today. So, tell me, which of these places would you like to visit? Share your thoughts in the comments. Here are 2 options that you'll surely love.